The scorching sun blazed like fire, its intense rays pouring down from the sky, causing the entire land to shimmer in the heat. The willows drooped slightly, their leaves retracting, appearing listless and sluggish. In a clearing lit by patches of bright sunlight filtered through the willow branches, hundreds of figures sat in quiet meditation. They were a group of somewhat youthful boys and girls, each with their eyes half closed in deep concentration, their breathing rhythmic and steady. As they breathed in and out, faint, almost imperceptible glimmers of light surrounded them, shimmering as if drawn by the flow of their spiritual energy. A gentle breeze swept by, rustling their robes and adding a touch of grandeur to the scene. At the front of the group, on a stone platform, sat another figure, quietly meditating. His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers interlaced, his eyes tightly shut, as though deep in a cultivation trance. This figure, also a young boy, had soft, slightly messy black hair. His face, still youthful and slightly thin, carried a calm and pleasant demeanor. At that moment, visible to the naked eye, rays of light radiated from his body. It was as if a mysterious energy was flowing into him, his body absorbing this power. Some of the boys beneath the platform subtly opened their eyes. They gazed at the glowing figure above, unable to hide their admiration and envy. Their whispers soon broke the silence. Mu Gu is amazing. While we're still sensing the world's spiritual energy, he's already reached the spirit movement stage. Truly, he deserves to be the top of the Eastern Academy's Earth class. Haha, of course. Not just the Eastern Academy. I bet among all the same-age students, there aren't many who can compare to Mu Gu. A boy in gray, seemingly close to the one on the stone platform, overheard the whispers and couldn't help but smile with pride. Lowering his voice, he continued, Mu Gu was selected to participate in the Spirit Path trials. He's the only one from the entire northern spiritual realm with a spot. You all should know what kind of monstrous geniuses participate in the Spirit Path, right? The northern realm was buzzing about this for a while. Those who make it through are almost always snatched up by the 5 great academies. The 5 great academies? The mention of this illustrious name made many of the youths gulp nervously, their eyes filled with longing and fervor. For them, the 5 great academies were the ultimate dream. However, the selection process was brutal. Only the most talented geniuses had a chance. To enter one of them would guarantee a boundless future. Mu Gu is certainly amazing, but I heard he only participated for a year. Some people say he was the first to be expelled from the Spirit Path before completing the trials. A boy hesitated for a moment before speaking softly, but quickly added, we all know Mu Ji's abilities. Even if the Spirit Path is filled with geniuses from all over the world, Mu Gu wouldn't fall behind. He must have been unfairly treated to be expelled. The group of youths exchanged glances. This was not much of a secret, even in the northern spiritual realm. While they felt regret, they were also curious. They really wanted to know why someone as exceptional as Mu Gu, who had earned their respect, would be expelled from the trials. The boy in gray sneered, unconvinced, and said, Humph. It's definitely because someone in the Spirit Path was jealous of Mu Gu and used dirty tricks to force him out. But it doesn't matter. With his abilities, Mu Gu will join the 5 great academies sooner or later, and then everyone will understand. The youths shook their heads, knowing the path to the 5 great academies wasn't that simple. After all, Mu Gu had only spent a year in the Spirit Path. He couldn't even be considered to have truly completed his cultivation. Compared to those other monstrous talents who emerged from the trials, Mu Gu still had a long way to go. Bang! Just as they were talking, a piece of broken wood suddenly flew off the stone platform and hit the gray-clad boy on the forehead. A voice followed, filled with teasing mockery, Su Ling, do you all think I'm just for show? A group of young boys and girls quickly lifted their heads, only to see the young man, who had been cultivating on the stone platform, open his eyes. His pitch-black eyes resembled the night sky, filled with spiritual energy. A faint smile was also on his lips, a smile that was both sunny and gentle, making his face appear somewhat more handsome, as if it were the finishing touch, bringing out his charm. It must be said, this was a rather interesting young man. Hehe, brother Mu Chun. Don't It's hard enough to get some time off, and I was looking forward to having some fun. If my dad finds out about this embarrassing thing, he'll definitely beat me to death." The young man in gray laughed, holding his forehead. The surrounding boys and girls also burst into laughter, the atmosphere lively. "You know your dad's temper. If you can't enter the spirit movement stage within 3 months, just wait to be beaten." The young man called Mu Chun shook his head and replied with a hint of annoyance. "Entering the spirit movement stage isn't that easy. I'm not like you, Brother Mu, who can casually participate in the spirit road, like a freak." Ling scoffed, then quickly shut his mouth. Although this wasn't a secret in the entire northern spiritual realm, and Mu Chun himself didn't avoid it, such expulsion wasn't a matter to be proud of. Hearing this, Mu Chun smiled without much change in his expression. He slightly raised his head, his gaze fixed on the tree branches that were bathed in dappled sunlight. His eyes showed a trace of nostalgia and complexity. "The spirit road? I wonder how those guys are doing now. They should have finished their training by now, right? If so, perhaps soon they would be able to enter the 5 great academies." "And her." Mu Qian pursed his lips. A black-dressed girl with a slender figure and cold, beautiful features flashed through his mind. She always carried a dark sword, and her silver hair shimmered like the Milky Way as she moved. It was this mysterious, cold, and maddeningly challenging girl who, for reasons unknown, had chased him for half a year during the Spirit Road trials, all because he had once saved her. But when he was forced to leave, she was the first to unsheath her sword and block his way without hesitation. Thinking of the icy killing intent that had once appeared on her face, someone who had little emotion but could potentially become a great disaster, Mu Chun couldn't help but feel a moment of daze. Such nostalgia. Heh. Isn't that the only one from our northern spiritual realm who participated in the Spirit Road, little Mu Chun? You're still leading others in cultivation? Teacher Mo really values you." A somewhat harsh voice interrupted his thoughts. Mu Chun calmly lifted his head. Not far away, a group of more than 10 people slowly walked over. The leader was a young man with a rebellious look. He was chewing on a grassroot and grinning at Mu Chun. "Lu Che, what are you and your Western Academy people doing in our Eastern Academy? Looking for a beating?" Ling, the young man who had been called Mu Chun's companion, stood up with a darkened expression when he saw them, sneering. Whoosh! At that moment, the several hundred Eastern Academy students also stood up, their gazes turned sharply toward the newcomers. The crowd's size made them imposing. The 2 academies, Eastern and Western, often had various competitions. Generally, the Western Academy had been stronger, and Eastern Academy students tended to avoid them. However, this year, the situation had changed significantly, all thanks to Mu Chen's presence. In a competition between Earth class students 3 months ago, Xuedong from the Western Academy, who had ranked 3rd, was defeated by Mu Chun, which allowed many Eastern Academy students to release a breath of frustration. It also weakened the arrogance of the Western Academy. Now, seeing these Western Academy people provoke Mu Chun again, Ling and the others couldn't hold back. Heh. Eastern Academy sure is getting cocky, thinking that just because they have Mu Chun, they can challenge our Western Academy? Lu Che, seeing that the Eastern Academy had the advantage in numbers, wasn't the least bit afraid. Instead, he sneered, pointing at the high platform not far away and grinning. "Why don't you try making a move?" Ling and the others turned their gazes toward the high platform. There, several figures were smiling at them, and as they recognized some of those familiar faces, the expressions of Ling and the others changed. In the academy, there were not only the Eastern and Western courts, but also 2 divisions based on realms, the Earth class and the Heavenly class. Mu Chun and his group were in the Earth class, while those on the high platform were senior students from the Western court's Heavenly class, whose strength was naturally much greater than theirs. As Ling and the others' expressions changed, the Heavenly class seniors on the high platform looked down at them with smiles, chatting among themselves. That must be Mu Chun from the Eastern court, right? He's now quite a well-known figure even in the northern spiritual realm. Hard to believe he's already reached the spirit movement stage at such a young age. Though it's only the initial stage, he's already qualified to enter the heavenly class. Quite impressive. Yeah, not bad at all. The Eastern Court has produced a talent. Once he advances to their heavenly class, we in the Western Court's heavenly class might feel some pressure. I heard he was selected to participate in the Spirit Road, but for some reason, he was expelled. It's a bit amusing. I've never heard of something like this happening before. Maybe they picked the wrong person, and that's why they kicked him out? Haha. Among the group, there was a girl in red. She had a tall, graceful figure with snow-white skin and a delicate, beautiful face that gave off a touch of allure. She lazily leaned against the railing, her narrow, beautiful eyes gazing at the standoff below, then pausing on the young man named Chen, seemingly intrigued. Heh, Ling, it seems like you know Chen, don't you? A senior from the heavenly class laughed, and from their positioning, it was clear she was the center of this small circle. His father is one of the domain lords of the northern spiritual realm, and he and my father have some connections. We used to play together when we were kids. The girl, Ling, replied casually. I heard that he had a crush on you back then? Ling's beautiful, narrow eyes blinked. She glanced at the figure sitting cross-legged in the distance. A beam of light pierced through the branches of a willow tree, landing gently on the young man's handsome face, creating a soft glow around him, both pleasant and striking. This made her pause for a moment, vaguely recalling the little boy who used to follow her around when they were children. Back then, there was nothing particularly remarkable about him, and she had paid him little attention. But who would have thought that this boy, with whom her relationship had grown distant, would one day become the only person from the northern spiritual realm eligible to participate in the Spirit Road? At that time, Chen had been the talk of the northern spiritual realm. His fame lasted until he was suddenly expelled from the Spirit Road. Childhood things don't count as a crush, Ling said with a light smile, though her bright eyes lingered on Chen for a moment longer. Now, he had begun to shine in his own right. Although he wasn't the top yet, the fact that someone as outstanding as him liked her was still something of a boost to her pride. Even though she knew deep down it was mostly a rumor, at her age, vanity still played a role. Haha, Ling's taste is quite extraordinary. Chen is decent, but he's not on the level of someone who could catch Ling's heart. Didn't even Lin Xiu fail? And he's ranked 7th on the overall leaderboard. He's already entered the mid-stage of the spirit movement stage. Chen still has some distance to go compared to him. Looks like the only one who could make Ling take a second look is brother Lu Mubai. As soon as Lu Mubai's name was mentioned, even the heavenly class seniors paused for a moment, clearly feeling some pressure. The top ranker, Lu Mubai, whose father was the domain lord of the largest domain in the northern spiritual realm, was a man of great renown. From his looks, strength, or background, Lu Mubai was a name that could easily make girls swoon in the academy. Among the Western Court students, everyone knew that Lu Mubai and Ling had grown quite close. Although they had yet to officially become a couple, it was only a matter of time before he won over the proud flower of the Western Court. Had Chen successfully passed the trials of the Spirit Road and gained entry to one of the 5 great academies, his fame might have surpassed Lu Mubai's. But unfortunately, for reasons unknown, he had been expelled. Now, anyone comparing the two could only elicit a chuckle. As Su Ling and the others looked up at the Western Court seniors on the high platform, their momentum weakened a bit, especially when they saw Ling. Their eyes initially burned with admiration, but then they quickly looked away, shrinking back. Hey, bro, that's senior Ling from the Western Academy. I heard you had a crush on her when you were younger. Su Ling leaned in close to Chen and whispered with a mischievous chuckle. Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes. It was true that he had some interactions with Ling when he was young, but at that age, who knew what liking meant? He just wanted a playmate. Over the years, as his father and Ling's father grew distant, their relationship also cooled. He had no idea when this rumor had started circulating. Chen shook his head helplessly and then glanced at Lu Che, who wore an expression full of provocation. A faint glow of spiritual energy emanated from his body, and his hands slowly tightened into fists. Spit it out if you've got something to say. Chen glanced briefly at a few people on the high platform in the distance. His gaze lingered for just a moment on a slender figure before he withdrew his eyes. Even with them there, if I want to beat you up, even if they stop me, you'll still be in for a beating. He wasn't fond of the arrogance of the Western Academy people either. You. Lu Che's eyes flashed with anger at Mu Chen's words. He was about to rebuke him, but then he saw Mu Chen's lips curve into a slight, cold smile. In that instant, the young man's once gentle and radiant face suddenly turned sharp, radiating an icy, ruthless aura, like a blade glinting in the sunlight. It felt like the sudden stir of a thunderstorm under lazy clouds, revealing a sharp edge without warning. That was not something an innocent boy of his age should have. Lu Che's rebuke died in his throat as he looked at Mu Chen in shock. His face changed, and he clearly harbored some fear toward Mu Chen's strength. He had been there when Mu Chen defeated Xuedong from their Western Academy's Earth class last time. Heh, you do seem a bit cocky, Lu Che sneered. The several senior students from the Western Academy's heavenly class on the high platform also heard this and raised their eyebrows, feeling their pride stung, especially with Hong Ling present. Hong Ling too looked at Mu Chen in surprise. She hadn't expected that the seemingly gentle young man would have such a forceful and masculine side. He seemed quite different from the boy she had known back then. The senior students from the Western Academy's heavenly class couldn't help but jump down from the high platform and slowly walk toward them. Seeing them approach, Su Ling and the others stepped back warily, their expressions full of caution. Hong Ling, however, didn't stop them. After all, she was from the Western Academy, and she was curious to see if the once ordinary boy in her eyes had truly transformed into someone dazzling after shedding his youthful innocence. Tong bro. Lu Che's face lit up when he saw these people approach. He turned his gaze back to Mu Chen's group, now laced with a hint of smugness. Mu Chen raised his brows slightly upon seeing this, but his expression remained calm. Although they were senior students from the heavenly class, their strength was only in the early stages of the spirit movement stage. If it came down to a fight, they wouldn't necessarily come out on top. The senior student in the lead, named Tong Guan, nodded and looked at Mu Chen with an amused glint. Just as he was about to speak, a sharp, reprimanding voice suddenly rang out from nearby. Tong Guan, your Western Academy heavenly class people come to our Eastern Academy to bully Earth class students? Do you think we're that easy to push around? Everyone froze for a moment, turning their heads in surprise. Several figures swiftly approached, and at the front was a tall young woman. Her dark robes traced the elegant curves of her body, and her face was strikingly beautiful. Her long, black hair was tied in a ponytail, and her slender legs were graceful and straight. Her beauty rivaled that of Hong Ling. At this moment, the young woman looked at Tong Guan and the others with a cold, piercing gaze, and those behind her also wore unfriendly expressions. It's Senior Qian'er. Su Ling and the others became excited upon recognizing her. Some of the younger boys even flushed slightly. She and Hong Ling were known as the two flowers of the academy, and their admirers were countless. It was a surprise to run into her here today. Heh, so it's Xun'er, Tong Guan said, slightly stunned, his expression becoming less at ease. The young girl, known as Tang Qian'er, walked up to Mu Chen's side. She furrowed her delicate willow-shaped brows as she sized up Tong Guan, then glanced at Hong Ling on the high platform. The two women locked eyes, and it seemed as though sparks were flying between them. What are you two doing here? Tang Qian'er withdrew her gaze and coldly questioned. Come on, what's with that tone? Although we're from the Western Academy, we're still from an academy, so us being here shouldn't be considered breaking any rules, right? Tong Guan shrugged and smiled. Tang Qian'er snorted coldly and then extended her delicate hand to pat Mu Chen's shoulder, raising her sharp chin. Mu Chen is from our Eastern Academy. If you dare to cause trouble for him again, don't blame me for being rude. As she spoke, her black ponytail swayed with her movements. Her posture was strikingly heroic, giving off the aura of a big sister. Looks like you're quite popular with the ladies. Tong Guan flashed Mu Chen a smile, his expression a mix of mockery and jealousy. He had a bit of a soft spot for Tang Qian'er, but he had never received any kindness from her. Popularity with women is also a kind of strength. Mu Chen chuckled, as if he hadn't noticed the sarcasm in Tong Guan's words. Compared to those people in the spirit road, Tong Guan seemed a little too immature. Hong Ling on the high platform shot Mu Chen a glance, a hint of disappointment crossing her mind before slowly retracting her gaze. Was he still as timid and lazy as before? Forget it. We're not here to cause trouble. We just came to inform you of something. Seeing that Mu Chen wasn't getting worked up, Tang Guan lost interest and waved his hand at Lu Che. With a cold smirk, Lu Che spoke, Mu Chen, I'm here on behalf of Brother Lu Yang to deliver a message. 10 days from now, at the 2 Academies competition, he's chosen you as his opponent. Lu Yang. Upon hearing that name, Su Ling and the others all changed their expressions. Lu Yang was the true number 1 of the Western Academy's Earth class, and it was said that he had just recently broken through to the spirit movement stage. Oh, and by the way, let me tell you something else. 3 days ago, during a test, Lu Yang discovered he actually has a spiritual vein, though it's only a mortal grade one, Lu Che said with a smug look, his eyes glinting as he looked at Mu Chen. Mortal grade spiritual vein? This statement caused not only Su Ling and the others to change their expressions, but even Tang Qian'er was slightly moved. Among all the students in the academy, those with spiritual veins were extremely rare, and no more than a handful possessed them. To think that Lu Yang had one too. A mortal grade spiritual vein. Tang Guan clicked his tongue, then looked at Mu Chen with a pitying expression. Lu Yang was at the initial spirit movement stage, and with a mortal grade spiritual vein, it would be hard for even someone at the mid-spirit movement stage to defeat him. It seemed Mu Chen was in for a rough time. Brother Lu Yang says, if you're too scared to accept, it's fine. Just don't show up on the day of the competition. He won't make things difficult for you, Lu Che said with a grin. If Mu Chen didn't show up, his reputation in the Eastern Academy would surely be in ruins. You're bullying people too much. Tang Qian'er's brows furrowed, and she shouted, Senior Qian'er, this isn't our fault. People should always be a little more low-key. Just because someone got lucky and earned a spot in the Spirit Road doesn't mean they can act like they're untouchable, Lu Che said, sneering. You, Tang Qian'er, enraged, was about to step forward, but a hand suddenly grabbed her wrist. She turned to see Mu Chen's youthful face break into a bright smile. Tell Lu Yang I'll be waiting for him. Now that's some guts. We'll be looking forward to your performance then, Lu Che said, giving Mu Chen a thumbs up with a broad grin before laughing and turning to leave. It was clear he was eager for the competition in 10 days. Lu Che, Tang Guan, and the others all left, and Hong Ling on the high platform gave them a faint glance before turning away. Brother Mu, are you really going to accept Lu Yang's challenge? Now that guy has a spiritual vein, he's not someone to take lightly, Su Ling said, watching the retreating figures of Tang Guan and the others with some concern. I'll do my best, Mu Chen said casually. Hey, you're being dumb. They're obviously provoking you. You don't have to accept this challenge. Tang Qian'er huffed angrily. Don't worry, Senior Qian'er. I'll know what to do, Mu Chen smiled. Tang Qian'er furrowed her willow-shaped brows, her bright eyes fixed on the young man's still somewhat immature face. He wore a radiant, gentle smile, but for some reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden deep within his pitch-black eyes. Qian'er seems to care a lot about me? Mu Chen looked at the slightly annoyed yet charming face in front of him and couldn't help but smile. I couldn't care less if you die. Tang Qian'er blushed slightly, then gave Mu Chen a white-eyed glance. I'm just worried you'll get beaten half to death and disgrace our Eastern Academy. Mu Chen chuckled. Tang Qian'er's father was also one of the domain lords of Bailing City, and they had a close relationship with his father. The two families had long had a good relationship, so he and Tang Qian'er got along quite well. By the way, I just heard some news. Tang Qian'er waved her hand, sending Su Ling and the others away, then looked at Mu Chen with a serious gaze. I got this from the dean and the others. Apparently, Spirit Road has officially ended. Mu Chen's body stiffened slightly. He looked up and exhaled a breath of relief. Finally, it was over. Word has it that some extremely monstrous individuals appeared in this Spirit Road, including one even more terrifying. Apparently, this person has a rare heaven-grade spiritual vein, something that only appears once in 10,000 years. The 5 great academies fought tooth and nail to compete for him. Spiritual veins come in 3 grades: heaven, earth, and human, all of which greatly benefit cultivation. In general, Those with a spiritual vein can cultivate faster than ordinary people. Over the years, no Earth-grade spiritual vein has appeared, let alone a heaven-grade. This shows just how rare a heaven-grade spiritual vein truly is. Tang Qian'er stuck out her delicate red tongue, looking incredibly cute and playful. Heaven-grade spiritual vein, huh? I've never seen one. Those who participate in the Spirit Road are truly freaks. By the way, you also participated in the Spirit Road. Do you know who that person is? His name should be Chen? Mu Chen said faintly, recalling a name that left a deep impression on him. You know him? Tang Qian'er asked in surprise. Yeah, I do. He's definitely an extremely powerful person. Mu Chen smiled, his eyes narrowing. Almost had to kill him. Tang Qian'er's beautiful eyes widened in shock, staring at the suddenly cold and youthful face in disbelief, stammering, Really? Of course not. Do you really believe that? Mu Chen laughed, his cold demeanor vanishing instantly. Looking at Tang Qian'er's stunned expression, he couldn't help but laugh again. Tang Qian'er clenched her teeth in frustration, as if she wanted to bite him, but in the end, she held back and huffed. You've just entered the spirit movement stage, haven't even started cultivating the spirit arts, right? I heard that Liu Yang is already practicing it. Spirit arts? I can start practicing them now that I'm back. Actually, my dad said I should go back once I enter the spirit movement stage. Mu Chen chuckled. Well, I'm leaving then. Tang Qian'er nodded. After all, Mu Chen's father was one of the domain lords of Biling City, so he would probably be given some solid spirit arts. She didn't say much more, waved her jade hand, and with a flick of her black horsetail hair, she swayed her waist and walked away lightly. Wait. Tang Qian'er stopped her steps, turned her head to look at Mu Chen, thought for a moment, and said, If you're not sure, I can help you beat up Liu Yang. Although his older brother Liu Mubai might be a bit of a hassle. You think I need your help? Mu Chen was helpless. How did she even come up with that idea? Humph, ungrateful. Tang Qian'er grumbled, irritated. She usually refused to help others, but this guy always seemed to irritate her, which only made her angrier as she stormed off. Mu Chen watched her charming silhouette as she left and smiled, muttering to himself, Since the Spirit Road is over, she should have joined one of the 5 great academies by now. I wonder which one. He remembered the moment when he left, deep within the dense forest, where a girl with long silver hair had quietly watched him with her deep, unfathomable aquamarine eyes. I'll be waiting for you at one of the 5 great academies. If you don't come... The girl's delicate hand gripped a long black sword, slowly pressing it against his chest, lightly stabbing it into his heart. I'll kill him for you. But... She stared at him, her eyes clear and serene, like glass. I don't like people who easily admit defeat, and this time, you haven't really lost. At least, I like you. A gentle breeze blew, lifting her proud and brilliant silver hair, and on her usually cold, pale face, a faint blush appeared. It was subtle, but incredibly beautiful, leaving an unforgettable impression. The northern spiritual realm is divided into 9 territories, each controlled by a lord. These territories are often either united or at odds with one another, which has maintained the current state of the northern spiritual realm with its 9 domains. Apart from these 9 territories, there is another powerful force within the northern spiritual realm that cannot be ignored. However, unlike the ever-conflicting territories, this force has always maintained a neutral stance. They have no ambition to expand their territory, merely guarding their own land and gathering students. Because of this, their status within the northern spiritual realm has grown increasingly prestigious. Moreover, this force holds the key to entry into the 5 great academies, a prize that all the domain lords covet. They understand that although their status within the northern spiritual realm is not low, it pales in comparison to that of the 5 great academies. Therefore, once their children come of age, they immediately send them to train there. As a result, the most powerful force not to be offended in the northern spiritual realm is this force. Mu Domain, Mu City. When Mu Chen stepped out of the teleportation spirit array, the bustling noise of the city reached his ears. He smiled slightly as he looked at the prosperous site of Mu City. Mu City is the main city of Mu Domain, and his father, Mu Feng, is the lord of Mu domain. Young master? Young master, you're back? Quick, inform the domain lord. The guards stationed near the teleportation spirit array were taken by surprise when they saw the young man step out. They were immediately overjoyed and gathered around him. Thanks, but I can return on my own, Mu Chen smiled at the guards. Having grown up here, he was familiar with many of them. Although he was the son of the domain lord, his personality was exceptionally good, so he was well-liked in Mu City. He waved off the enthusiastic guards and hurried toward the city. After a while, a large mansion appeared before him, with the words Mu Manor prominently displayed in front. The area before Mu Manor was heavily guarded, but Mu Chen paid no mind, heading straight inside. Upon recognizing him, the guards smiled gently, bowed from a distance, and didn't interfere. Dad! Mu Chen ran into the manor and straight to the living room. There, he saw two figures. The man sitting in the main seat was dressed in a black robe. His posture was straight and firm like a spear, and his face was resolute, though his slightly graying hair hinted at the passage of time. It was clear that he had been handsome in his youth. This man was Mu Chen's father, Mu Feng, and also the lord of Mu domain. Sitting beside Mu Feng was a thin, middle-aged man. His sunken eyes gave him a somewhat gloomy look, and his tightly pressed lips exuded a sharp, cold aura. However, that coldness softened as soon as he saw Mu Chen enter, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. You're back, and you're making such a racket, Mu Feng said with a smile, putting down what he was holding and looking at his son with a mock scolding tone. Despite the scolding, there was a deep warmth in his gaze. Domain Lord, it's rare for young Master Mu to return, so naturally, we should be a bit more excited, the thin, middle-aged man said with a smile. Uncle Zhou understands, Mu Chen said with a grin, sitting down in a chair. His tone was friendly and familiar. Uncle Zhou, whose full name was Zhou Yi, was his father's lifelong friend. He had accompanied Mu Feng through many battles in the northern spiritual realm, helping him become the lord of Mu domain. He had also watched Mu Chen grow up, so they shared a deep bond. You've reached the spirit movement stage? Mu Feng raised his eyebrows, his gaze suddenly focusing on Mu Chen with a hint of surprise. Zhou Yi also looked at Mu Chen in shock. He could indeed sense the spiritual energy fluctuations emanating from him. I broke through recently, Mu Chen nodded, speaking casually. There was no hint of arrogance in his tone. Looks like you came back for the spirit arts, Mu Feng said with a smile. Only after reaching the spirit movement stage could one cultivate spirit arts, and only by doing so could they truly harness the power of spiritual energy. In 10 days, I'll be facing someone in a battle. Without spirit arts, it could get troublesome, Mu Chen said with a shrug. Seeing the puzzled looks from his father and Uncle Zhou, he quickly explained the challenge from Lu Yang. The Lu family really doesn't have a single decent person among them. After hearing this, Zhou Ye's eyes turned cold, and he said, the Lu family has been getting more and more arrogant over the years. Even though Lu domain is the strongest in the northern spiritual realm, do they really think our Mu domain is an easy target? Mu Feng laughed indifferently. I didn't expect that Lu Yang would also possess a spiritual vein. The Lu family certainly has favorable conditions. It's just a mortal-grade spiritual vein, Zhou Yi said, though his brows furrowed as he looked at Mu Chen. Lu Yang is also at the initial spirit movement stage. With the assistance of his spiritual vein, even someone at the mid-spirit movement stage might struggle against him. Mu Chen smiled faintly. He had dealt with people who possessed heaven-grade spiritual veins before, so what was the worth of a mortal-grade spiritual vein? Compared to those monstrous beings in the spirit road, Lu Yang still seemed too green. Mu Feng looked at Mu Chen's slightly immature face. He could sense that his son had changed somewhat since returning from the spirit road. Although the little guy usually appeared gentle, Mu Feng, who had experienced countless battles and killings, could detect a hidden sharpness beneath that gentle and immature exterior. That sharpness was like a dormant dragon, silent until it exploded, and when it did, it would be as fierce as a thunderclap. This change both surprised and somewhat pleased Mu Feng. He was extremely fond of his only son, and though he was curious as to why Mu Chen had been expelled halfway from the spirit road, He didn't pry since Chen had chosen not to speak about it. He trusted that his son wouldn't do anything to disappoint him. Let's go. I'll take you to choose a spirit art, Feng said as he stood up, waving his hand toward Chen before walking toward the back of the courtyard. Chen greeted Zhou Yi briefly before quickly following him. Following Feng through the backyard, they finally stopped in front of a stone door heavily guarded by many. Feng pressed his palm against the door, and a powerful surge of spiritual energy spread out, transforming into beams of light that enveloped the stone door. Chen stood behind Feng, feeling the immense spiritual energy fluctuation. He couldn't help but lick his lips. His father was indeed a powerhouse at the divine soul stage. This level of spiritual energy fluctuation was astonishing. In cultivation, one starts in the sensing stage, sensing the world's spiritual energy, followed by the spirit movement stage, where one can absorb spiritual energy into their body. After that comes the spirit wheel stage, where spiritual energy condenses into a wheel, a stage far more powerful than the spirit movement stage. Beyond the spirit wheel stage is the divine soul stage, a pivotal realm. Feng was at this level, and upon entering this stage, one could be considered a true powerhouse even in the northern spiritual realm. What's more, a cultivator in this stage has combat capabilities that far exceed those of someone in the spirit wheel stage. This is because once you reach the divine soul stage, you gain the unique ability to refine beast souls. Beast souls are the essences of the countless beasts in the world. Once refined, they grant the power of spiritual beasts, which, when combined with one's own spiritual energy, drastically increases combat strength. In the world, there exists a 10,000 beasts record, which is divided into two rankings, one for the heavens and one for the earth. This record lists numerous spiritual beasts, and the beast soul Feng had refined was from the dragon flame hawk, ranked 85th on the earth list. Over the years, Feng had dominated the northern spiritual realm, becoming the lord of the Mu territory, with the dragon flame hawk soul playing a crucial role in his rise to power. Creak. As Chen was momentarily distracted, the heavy stone door slowly creaked open, its sound reverberating through the air. When the door opened, a musty atmosphere rushed out. Feng waved his hand to dispel it, then stepped forward. Chen quickly followed. Behind the stone door was a secret chamber, dimly lit by flickering flames. Rows of stone racks came into view, upon which lay jade slips, faintly glowing. Chen's eyes brightened as he gazed at the numerous jade slips in the chamber. Clearly, these were all spirit arts. Feng clapped his hands and casually glanced toward the deeper parts of the room before smiling lightly. All my stock is here. Choose whatever you like. I'm curious to see what you'll pick. Chen's black eyes gleamed as he looked around the stone room. As the lord of the Mu territory, Feng was one of the most powerful figures in the northern spiritual realm, so his collection over the years was certainly not lacking. Without hesitation, Chen stepped into the stone room and casually picked up a jade slip. A faint glow emerged, revealing the characters inscribed on it. Mortal grade middle tier spirit art. Flame cloud art. Chen blinked. Spirit arts were generally divided into different categories such as martial arts, attack arts, defense arts, and so on. These arts were further categorized into 3 tiers: God grade, spirit grade, and mortal grade. Each tier was divided into upper, middle, and lower grades. The flame cloud art was a mortal grade middle tier martial art. Chen toyed with the jade slip for a moment before putting it down, clearly not very interested. He then strolled deeper into the room, occasionally picking up a jade slip, only to quickly set it back down. Feng slowly followed behind, allowing Chen to pick through the various spirit arts. The mountain-shattering codex, mortal grade upper tier. The vast array of spirit arts dazzled Chen's eyes. Although most of them were mortal grade, he knew that even these would incite fierce competition if they were taken outside. Feng's collection wasn't ordinary by any means, even in Bailing City. After wandering around for a while, Chen finally reached the depths of the stone chamber. However, he still hadn't found the spirit art he was searching for. He then raised his head and looked at the last stone pedestal, where 3 open jade boxes lay. You've got quite the ambition. These 3 spirit arts were hard-earned by your father at the cost of his life. Mu Feng chuckled when he saw Mu Chen's gaze land on the 3 jade boxes. Mu Chen, curious, walked over. He took a jade slip from one of the boxes. The slip was crystal clear and warm to the touch, clearly not an ordinary item. Yin Long art? Mu Chen scanned the jade slip and was taken aback. It's actually a low-grade spirit art? He knew very well the value of a spirit art of this grade. If it were put up for auction, it would fetch no less than 1,000,000 spirit coins. This is the art I cultivate, the Yin Long art. It was what I obtained when I acquired the Flame Dragon Hawk Spirit Essence. Mu Feng nodded and explained. Mu Chen played with the jade slip for a while, then took out the other 2. One was called Heaven Shaking Art, and the other was Spirit Gathering Manual. Both were also of low-grade spirit rank. Mu Chen was reluctant to put down the 3 jade slips, and for a moment, he hesitated, unsure which one to choose. Have you made up your mind? These 3 spirit arts are equally formidable. You can pick one to cultivate, and if you find a better one later, you can switch, Mu Feng said with a light smile. Mu Chen hesitated, his hand floating over the 3 jade slips, before finally settling on the Spirit Gathering Manual. Though it wasn't good for offense, it was excellent for laying a solid foundation. His hand hovered over the Spirit Gathering Manual, but just as he was about to make his choice, something inside him stirred for some unknown reason. His gaze shifted slightly, and in the shadow of the 3 jade boxes, he noticed a dusty, dark jade slip. What's this? Mu Chen was momentarily stunned, extending his hand to grab the dark jade slip. As he scanned it, faint inscriptions appeared on its rough surface. Great Pagoda Art? Mu Chen looked at the 4 blurry characters, a hint of confusion crossing his eyes. There was no grade listed for this spirit art. He turned to Mu Feng, but was met with a somewhat complicated expression. Mu Feng was staring at the dark jade slip in his hand, with a look of tender nostalgia. Father, Mu Chen called out, raising the jade slip. What kind of spirit art is this? Why doesn't it have a grade? It's just an ordinary spirit art. Choose one of the others, Mu Feng said, slowly averting his gaze. Mu Chen furrowed his brow, rubbing the black jade slip in his hand. After a moment of silence, he smiled. I'll take this one. Mu Feng froze for a moment. He stared at Mu Chen, who met his gaze. The young boy's face, though still youthful, had a hint of stubbornness. Are you sure you want this one? Mu Feng asked after a long pause. Mu Chen nodded. I don't know why, but I feel like if I don't choose it, I'll regret it. Father, where did this spirit art come from? Mu Feng looked at the jade slip with complex emotions. After a long while, he sighed deeply, a wry smile forming on his lips as he muttered under his breath, in a voice only he could hear, quiet. You really are your mother's son. This jade slip, your mother left it behind. Actually, it was meant for you. But she also said that if you didn't choose it, it would remain sealed forever. Mu Feng said softly. Mother? Mu Chen's body trembled involuntarily as he muttered the word, unfamiliar yet strangely stirring. He had never met his mother, but deep within, he could vaguely recall a warm, tender shadow. Since he became aware of things, he had never pressed Mu Feng for information about his mother, and Mu Feng had never mentioned her either. Sometimes, it felt as though both father and son had chosen to avoid the subject of the person who was so important to them. She must still be alive, right? Mu Chen gently caressed the jade slip, hesitating for a moment before finally asking the question he had longed to know for years. When he was young, he used to carve many wooden sculptures. They were all identical, yet without clear faces, as the shape of the wood was the faint and elusive tender shadow deep in his heart. Each sculpture was a piece of longing and remembrance. The matter regarding your mother is complicated. Telling you now won't change anything. But if you really want to know, then cultivate this technique. When you reach a certain level, you'll naturally understand, Mu Feng said after a long silence, slowly clenching his hands into fists. His eyes were sharp as he stared at Mu Chen. Is my mother's departure related to me? Mu Chen suddenly asked. You were always the one she cared about the most. She would give up everything for you. Mu Feng didn't answer directly, but instead gently ruffled Mu Chen's head. With a self-deprecating tone, he said, It's your father's fault for not being capable enough to keep you and your mother together. I tried, but I still failed. I'm sorry. Chen silently nodded, a bright smile spreading across his youthful face. Dad, you want to see Mom again, don't you? I do. I really do. I wish we could reunite as a family, Feng muttered softly, his voice filled with endless longing. Chen clenched his fist tightly. The rough, dark jade slip in his palm emitted a warm, comforting heat. After a long pause, he looked up and smiled at Feng. I've chosen it, Dad. Don't worry. I'll finish what you couldn't. If you trust me, one day, I'll reunite our family. No one will be able to stop me. Feng stared at his son's youthful face, his eyes filled with determination. A wave of bitterness rose in his chest, and his eyes reddened slightly. Finally, he nodded deeply. Silence.